Imagine a room packed with people. They are screaming at the top of their lungs, grabbing their heads, and literally weeping over 11 complete strangers running around on a television screen. It is absolute emotional chaos. And then there is you. You are sitting right in the middle of this madness, perfectly calm, looking at the screen and feeling absolutely nothing. Just pure, peaceful indifference. If you have ever been in this exact situation, people have probably told you that you are boring, or that you just lack passion in life. But let us shatter that myth right now. Not caring about sports does not make you a dull person, and there is absolutely nothing broken inside of you. In fact, science reveals a fascinating truth. You belong to a massive group, making up roughly 40% of the population, whose brains are quite literally wired differently. Your neural pathways process excitement, meaning, and reward in a completely unique way. Stick around, because we are about to decode exactly what is happening inside your head, and why your brain is playing an entirely different game. Let us start with an obvious question. Why do so many people care so deeply about a game? The answer goes way back to our evolutionary roots. Human beings are, by nature, tribal creatures. For thousands of years, being part of a pack meant the difference between life and death. Your tribe protected you, helped you hunt, and kept you safe from predators. Today, those ancient survival instincts are still deeply embedded inside us. And sports? They are basically our modern tribes, just with much better merchandise. When a passionate fan watches their team play, something wild happens inside their head. Their brain releases a massive flood of oxytocin. This is the exact same bonding hormone that makes you feel a deep, intense love for your family and your closest friends. The brain literally tricks these fans into believing that those millionaire athletes on the television screen are actual members of their own family clan. But here is where you come in. As someone who simply does not care about sports, you likely have what psychologists call a lower herd instinct. Your identity is not tightly tied to being part of a massive crowd. You are highly independent. Because you do not need to merge your identity with a larger group to feel complete, you also lack that aggressive us versus them mentality. You simply do not generate blind, irrational hatred toward another group of people just because they happen to be wearing a different colored shirt. But there is another layer to this obsession. And what happens inside the brain of a sports fanatic during a live game is actually quite concerning. Think about that thrilling feeling you get right before you open a surprise gift. That intense rush of anticipation is dopamine firing in your brain. For passionate sports fans, a live game is essentially a massive, emotional slot machine playing out on the grass. Every single play, every unexpected pass, and every near miss delivers continuous, micro-doses of dopamine directly to their reward centers. The secret ingredient making this so powerfully addictive is unpredictability. Because no one knows exactly how the match will end, the brain gets hooked on the suspense. In psychology, this is known as intermittent reinforcement. It is the single most compelling reward schedule ever discovered, and it is the exact same mechanism that keeps gamblers glued to casino tables. The human brain simply does not care where the dopamine comes from. It just knows that it desperately wants more of it. So, this brings us to you. Why does this massive chemical party completely bypass your brain? Why can you sit through the biggest championship game of the year and feel absolutely nothing? It is not because you are cold, and it is definitely not because you are emotionless. The truth is, your specific dopamine system simply refuses to be triggered by vicarious competition. You just do not get a chemical reward from watching other people fight for victory on a screen. And here is the most mind-blowing part of all. You might not even have a choice in the matter. Groundbreaking research from the University of Chicago suggests that this indifference could actually be genetic. Scientists found that specific variations in your dopamine receptor genes can predict how much you care about competitive spectator activities. Let that sink in for a moment. Your complete lack of interest in whether the home team wins or loses is not a character flaw. It might literally be programmed right into your DNA. But the differences do not stop at your DNA. There is another fascinating psychological layer here, and it has everything to do with how you view yourself and your own self-worth. Have you ever noticed how passionate sports fans talk after a big game? When their favorite team is victorious, they proudly announce, "We won." They claim the victory as their own. But when that exact same team loses a heartbreaking match, suddenly the pronoun changes. They shake their heads and say, they lost. In behavioral psychology, this is a very real, well-documented phenomenon. The winning part is known as BIRGing, which stands for basking in reflected glory. Fans literally borrow the success of the athletes to temporarily boost their own egos. And when the team fails, they create psychological distance to protect their self-esteem from the pain of defeat. As someone who does not obsess over sports, you operate on a completely different wavelength. You do not engage in this emotional roller coaster because your core sense of self is already incredibly stable. Your ego does not fluctuate based on the performance of a stranger kicking or throwing a ball hundreds of miles away. You possess a strong, independent identity. You simply do not feel the need to borrow external victories, especially those that are completely out of your control, just to feel successful or validated in your own life. You draw your true confidence from your own real-world actions, not from a television scoreboard. Now, this brings us to a fascinating paradox about human emotion. People who are obsessed with sports actually score incredibly high on certain empathy tests. They possess this remarkable ability to care deeply about the pain, the injuries, and the struggles of complete strangers, just as long as those strangers are wearing their favorite team's colors. They will literally cry for an athlete they have never even met. So, does your lack of interest in the game mean that you are cold or unempathetic? Absolutely not. It all comes down to a psychological concept called empathy allocation. Every single human being has a finite, limited capacity for how much they can deeply care about things. Your emotional energy is not a bottomless well, because you are not draining your daily emotional reserves on the unpredictable outcome of a game. You naturally redirect that profound empathy elsewhere. You pour your emotional capacity into your personal relationships, meaningful social issues, the appreciation of art, and the pursuit of intellectual discovery. You still deeply crave that exact same feeling of transcendence, connection, and emotional high that a sports fanatic gets in the final seconds of a championship game. But your brain simply finds those breathtaking moments in completely different places. You experience that profound emotional rush when listening to a beautiful piece of music, standing quietly in the middle of nature, or suddenly grasping a brilliant new idea. You are still chasing the sublime. You are just not using a ball to find it. But we also need to be completely honest about another side of this story. For some people listening right now, not caring about sports is not just about DNA or empathy allocation. It is actually a profound psychological defense mechanism. It is a very real, invisible shield. Think back to your childhood. Maybe you were the kid who was always picked last in gym class. Perhaps you were bullied by the athletic kids, or you just felt completely left out and marginalized by a society that seemed to worship sports above everything else. Your brain learned early on to associate the game with feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, or exclusion. Or maybe, as an adult, your indifference is a quiet rebellion. It is your silent way of pushing back against the aggressive, hyper-competitive, and sometimes toxic nature of intense sports fandom. You simply do not want any part of that hostile, screaming energy. Or, on the absolute simplest level, you just find the whole thing incredibly boring. And you know what? Whether it is a deep psychological shield, a silent protest, or just pure boredom, every single one of those reasons is completely valid. This all boils down to one fundamental difference in how we experience meaning. Passionate fans find incredible meaning in the narrative. They love the story of the underdog, the miraculous comeback, and the epic rivalry. But to experience that thrill, they have to invest massive emotional energy into a parasocial relationship. This is a completely one-sided connection with a team or a player that does not even know they exist. They are, by definition, the ultimate spectators. And this is exactly where your brain disconnects. When you look at a live game, you just see a series of random events that have absolutely zero impact on your actual, real-world life. It feels entirely meaningless to you. Why? Because you are wired to be a participant, not a passive observer. You prefer to invest your precious time and energy into direct engagement. You want to pour your passion into things that actually respond to you. You seek out activities where your personal effort directly changes the outcome. Whether you are building a business, cultivating a relationship, or mastering a complex skill, you are the one shaping the narrative. Psychologists call this the flow state, that beautiful, immersive zone of complete absorption. Sports fans find their flow by watching others achieve greatness. You find yours by creating it yourself. Ultimately, there is a quiet power in your indifference. By not spending 3 hours every single weekend living through the struggles and victories of someone else, you get to be fiercely and fully present in your own life. So, remember this the next time everyone around you is glued to a screen. You are not broken. You are not missing out on some fundamental human experience. You are simply playing a completely different game. And in your game, the stakes belong entirely to you.